Hello. I want to record a short video on the question of psychology being a science or not a science. Because I see a lot of people online saying that psychology is not a science. So they think that all social sciences or sciences are not real scientific fields, and that maths and physics and stuff like that, chemistry, are scientific fields. So this would be my short intro on this question, on this subject. And I think that psychology is a science, but I also don't totally disagree with them. So I have a psychology degree, so I have studied this field at the university. You see, this is a Wikipedia psychology article. First of all, I'm not reading anything from this article. I'm just using it to be a video. I already know this stuff from books. So first of all, psychology was not a science back in the day. Mathematics was a science 2000, 3000, 5000 years ago. Maths was definitely a science. Psychology was not. Psychology is about 150 years old as a science, with William Wundt as one of the first empirical scientists in psychology. Before that, it was a philosophy. So you would have Hippocrates or someone else, Plato, Thales, Aristotle, write something in philosophy and then include some psychological observations, like, for example, oh, I see these kind of people are lazy, or no, some people are great at being leaders. So that's the same thing Immanuel Kant did. It was before it was a scientific area. So Hegel and all these kind of people are not scientists, and what they wrote is philosophy. That is not psychology. And if it is psychology, that's the unscientific field of psychology. And this is not science. With science, we started off with people like William James from USA and other kind of guys from behavioral psychology, because we tried to make it scientific, we tried to make it simple. We didn't know that much about it. So let's start off with like kind of comparing human beings with animals and our basic instincts with animal instincts. Let's see how we perceive colors, how do different people perceive colors. Do they perceive them the same way or not? So we started in behavioral science. That's of course, in some ways, it's a step back from these philosophical observations. Because if I observe some people to be better or worse than other people, and then I go and study just color perception, that's not as deep a subject. So that's why we had to move on into modern psychology, and with modern psychology, we got evolutionary psychology. With evolutionary psychology, we started to have some theories and hypotheses that started to explain how the human mind really works, started to explain some deeper parts of our mind and deeper concepts of our mechanisms and modules that created our behavior. That's also where you have behavioral economics and stuff like that. With evolutionary psychology, you need the biological psychology and also behavioral psychology, but also cognitive psychology, all these different fields and all these different experiments, also a lot of experiments from animal studies and from, yeah, experiments from all kind of different fields to create an understanding of the brain. And that's where evolutionary psychology plays a role, because it explains some of these behaviors we see in human beings and why they're there. How could they have evolved? Again, biological psychology, brain scannings and stuff like that with MRI machines. I'd say that's scientific. We don't have a concrete view of the mind because it's still a scan. We still do some tests. We do show these test subjects some pictures, and then we scan their brains, but it's not a one-to-one representation of what the brain actually does, right? It's still a science. We still find some results. and also behavioral psychology and behavioral science overall with animals and conditioning and stuff like that. Of course, that's a science because you repeat some results and you can repeat these results in a different country. You can repeat them in Uganda and then again replicate these kind of results. That's definitely a science. Cognitive psychology, again, this perception of how do I read these colors out loud? Will it be harder for me? Okay, why? How do I understand these kind of symbols? Are they the same length or not? Because that's something where cognitive biases play a role, or heuristics and stuff like that. So let's see: perception, attention, reasoning, thinking, problem solving, memory, learning, language, emotion. Is that the scientific areas? Well, we can study dogs or cats or chimpanzees, and we can study these stuff in other animals. And of course, we can study them in human beings. Why not? I mean, chimpanzees problem solve, right? And we can write books about that. We can try to make them solve some problems. We can do the same things with human beings, and that's a science because we can replicate these results. And then when we have some results, then we ask evolutionary psychologists, hey, why the hell are we getting these kind of weird results? Why do people actually see these lines of different length? Because they're clearly the same length. So why do we have these kind of things? And then evolutionary psychology will take experiments from these 10 or 20 different fields of psychology, and they will put them together, and then they will create a hypothesis about why we see the world as we do. So sometimes we have, for example, a bias with perception of danger. Some of our modules in the brain can perceive danger very easily, and we over-perceive it sometimes. That's, of course, an evolutionary advantage, right? Because it's better to perceive a danger that's not there than not to see it. So it's better to just be scared a bit too much than be scared one time too little and then die off or get injured. So yes, for example, we can study why people are tall, right? You can have some sociologist or some anthropologist go out into the field and then find out some results. Then they will say, okay, it seems like tall people are getting higher wages than short people. They're also in higher positions than short people. Also, women find tall people more attractive. They will just get these results, but sociologists and anthropologists very rarely can answer the questions of why we see these effects. So I have met a lot of sociologists, and they will usually just say, oh, it's probably an environmental effect. So it's probably something we see in the Western society. Let's do a study in Africa. Oh, I guess tall people in Africa are also more successful. So what the hell? Do they have some weird kind of societies in Africa too? No, because we see these results all over the world, and we can try to replicate them in a lab setting. We can ask women. Then when we ask women, it's usually psychologists who do that. Okay, why do you find men attractive, or do you find high men more attractive? Or usually we show them pictures and stuff like that, manipulated pictures where a man is a bit taller than the other man. Then they will see who they like the most. So we need to replicate these studies. We need to look into it, and then we need to present a hypothesis for why it is so. That's what psychology does, right? We have some results, and then we explain them. And also psychology again. We had this whole philosophical foundation for psychology, and that philosophical foundation is still found in psychology today, because psychology is kind of mismatched between the science of psychology and then the therapy of psychology. And the therapy of psychology is often not scientific, because with therapy you can have anyone do therapy. I can take anyone, I can meet anyone on the street and then ask him to do some therapy, and he will probably be okay at it, or even successful. At least he won't be worse at it than the average psychologist, because there's no real tools for that, except for really simple tools like cognitive therapy, and that's something anyone can learn really fast in a week or something like that. So again, we have psychoanalysis with Freud and Jung and these guys. That's not scientific. That's philosophy. So you kind of see a few examples in your life or some people in your life, and then you try to build up a worldview. That's how people regularly go about stuff, right? You see something in life, and then you build up a worldview. You see a man being aggressive, and then you say, "Hey, all men are assholes." So that's building up a worldview. But in psychology, we'll go about studying as many men as possible to get some statistical significant data, and then we'll conclude that men are more aggressive than women. Not more evil, not all assholes, just on average more aggressive. That's a different way to go about. And then of course again we have Maslow pyramid and stuff like that, like multiple intelligence theory, and Kierkegaard, Heidegger, guys like this. This is not scientific psychology. Like for example the Maslow pyramid of hierarchical needs, it's not scientific. We don't find it in any test data, and he also invented it on his desk, right? Just like psychoanalysis, it's not something they studied and then discovered some results. They just kind of invented it from thin air. And if we go further down here, you see that go into personality. And personality, again, it started out with psychoanalysis. For example, Carl Jung was the basis for the Myers-Briggs type indicator. That's of course not science. Again, this is something he just made up because he talked with some people, or maybe he just thought about talking with some people, and then he made up this kind of test, or these kind of personalities, and they are not scientific. If you want scientific personalities, you go into Big Five or Ocean, and we have replicated these kind of findings all over the world, in Africa and Turkey, in Russia and China, and we always find Big Five personality factors in all countries. So we are pretty sure they're real. And that's the difference between being a scientific field and not a scientific field. Again, unconscious mind, that's definitely, evolutionary psychology is about the conscious mind, right? And cognitive psychology, having biases and stuff like that. But having a id, that's not science. That's just guesswork. Motivations, I guess, again, that's something we can study. I don't see why it's not a science. I mean, we can study it, right? And then genes and environment. There's something I want to say about genes and environment. Again, we use genes in mental testing because G factor or IQ is something that we have found out is heritable, just like Ocean or Big Five. Ocean Big Five is 50% heritable, so that's 50% due to your genes alone. It's not influenced by any environment. While with your G factor or intelligence, that's like 80%, maybe 60% heritable. So you're born with a certain kind of intelligence that you then use. That's something we have found out in psychology. Again, this is something that we have studied, and we have done thousands and thousands of studies on these subjects of mental testing and intelligence, and we know it to be true. So that's a science, and that's where psychology really shines, because we have used intelligence testing in the military and the schools for 100 years. And it has been a huge success in the military and schools. They have really improved how we go about solving problems and how we go about helping people, and not judging them on being lazy or not lazy, but giving them a chance to show what they can do. And again, this is where genes come into play. I really like intelligence testing because you can use it in companies, while with genes and DNA testings, we still don't use it in companies. We use it in the medicinal field. Also mental health, also it's kind of scientific. I mean, we still do give questionnaires to people, so you cannot be sure if a person has stress or doesn't have stress, but we can be somewhat sure, and then we can use some cognitive therapy to help this person out. And again, mental testing used in education too. So some of these areas are actually used. So personality, you can use the Big Five, and intelligence testing, you can use it too with EQ testing. I don't know what you can use the Big Five for in a company setting, because yeah, I don't know, it doesn't correlate as strongly with success and grades and wages and success at jobs as IQ does. And computer simulations, animal studies, it's a huge part of psychology, at least also evolutionary psychology use a lot of animal studies. And then we go down to ethics. So of course then there's an ethics problem in psychology. When we do animal studies or human studies, use certain results for certain things, you can have a problem there. But it's like mathematics or physics being used to create an atom bomb. It doesn't really invalidate the science as a whole. But if we go into ethics, we'll find out that, in politics and academia, I can see again why some people would say psychology is not a science, because are all the psychology departments very scientific? No, not at all. A lot of people studying psychology, a lot of people teaching psychology, a lot of people applying psychology are not scientific in their thinking. That's completely true. When I was studying psychology, maybe 60% of the stuff I was taught or read about at my department was not science. It was philosophy, it was psychoanalysis, Freud, Carl Jung, stuff like that. So that's not, for me, that's not science. And sometimes you have to go into different areas to really find more conservatives. And that's of course a problem, because with some results, most psychologists will agree that these results are good. We need to, I believe in these results. But then you can have results about black people being less intelligent on average than white people or Orientals. Okay, is that a problem compared to your liberal understanding of the world? Maybe it is, and then you don't believe these results, and that's a huge problem. You need to accept the results that you see, so you cannot pick and choose, and that's of course a problem. And a lot of psychology is not scientific. Again, we go into physics and mathematics. You see a lot of intelligence people studying that. Need an IQ of over 130, or about 130, maybe, to study these subjects, because they're really hard. In psychology, on average, you have low IQ students. That's of course again a problem, because these students will become the professors. These students will make YouTube videos on on psychology, and that's a huge problem. But a field is probably more than the most of the people studying it, right? A field is a field. If only stupid people studied mathematics, it would still be a science. Just how you go about doing this stuff. With these kind of articles, you can't just have an average person writing this stuff and doing these kind of studies. You need a very high intelligence to write these kind of articles. They're not just philosophical guesswork, they're not just assumptions, they're not just biases, political biases applied. They are studies. And with these kind of studies, you need an IQ of probably 130 to do a good study. So, is psychology a science? I guess when I look at YouTube videos or stuff like that, some of the big channels with a lot of great graphics in them and millions and millions of views are often not scientific, because they find some intelligence results or IQ results and they don't present the data well because their political convictions make them ignore certain results or try to find different kind of results in the science. And that makes the whole subject unscientific. When you are just like me, you don't give a fuck about what kind of results you get. I don't care at all if white people are more intelligent than black people, or black people are more intelligent than white people, or Jews are the most intelligent in the world, or Orientals are more intelligent than white people. I don't care about that at all. I don't care if women are more intelligent than men are more intelligent than women. So I don't do studies, but when I read about psychology, I just try to read good findings and then just talk about good findings. So it can definitely be a scientific area. And with many people, it is a scientific area. And with random YouTube videos or random discussions on the streets, then maybe it's not that much a scientific area. Then it's more a political conviction or used to illustrate a worldview. So use statistics to come to a conclusion instead of using your personal views or personal life experiences. Then it will become a science.